Hey B&H viewers, today we're going to talk about creating shallow depth of field with rich, smooth, buttery bokeh. Bokeh. It's the aesthetic quality of the blur or out of focus areas produced by a lens. Now, before you can make bokeh, you'll need to produce a shallow depth of field. Now, here's some basic steps. 1. Put some distance between the subject and the background. The greater this distance, the greater the differentiation between what's in and out of focus. 2. Employ a large aperture. Aperture, often expressed in f-stops, determines the depth of field in your photos. The smaller the number, the larger the hole that lets light into the camera. Larger apertures will give you a shallower depth of field, opening the doorway to all that is bokehlicious. 3. Use the right lens. Different lenses have different aperture values. To create a shallow depth of field, you'll want something with the largest aperture possible. Also, consider focal length. Wide-angle lenses can work, but longer focal lengths add compression, an element that's incredibly useful in separating in-focus subjects from out-of-focus areas. 4. Sensor size, another important consideration. While shallow depth of field is possible with any size sensor, the available lenses, working distance from subjects, and overall rendering are significantly affected by sensor size. Typically, bigger is better. 5. Background. Choose a background that lends itself to being out of focus in an interesting way. Now, lights are always fun because they take on interesting shapes. Just don't try this with a blank white wall. 6. Don't forget your foreground. Shoot through a door frame, compose with flowers in the foreground. Remember, shallow depth of field isn't limited to showing off out of focus areas in the background. 7. Use less distance between yourself and the subject. By moving closer, you'll accentuate the details of your subject and add more nuance to the foreground and background. Okay, bokeh time. A bokeh is an aesthetic. Calling it good or bad is completely subjective, but there's a few things to look out for. 1. Aperture shape. If you fancy harsh, choppy bokeh, select a lens with fewer aperture blades. The look here is blunt, crude, and incredibly literal. There's nothing wrong with that. That might be what you're going for. But for a softer, more organic look, consider larger aperture lenses with rounded blades. This shapes the bokeh into spheres or delicate ovals. And if you want the softest, most nuanced bokeh out there, try an apodization lens. If you'd like to know more about apodization lenses, let us know in the comments. These are some of my favorite types of lenses for portraiture. Essentially, there's an extra element included in the optical formula for smoothing the edge shape of the bokeh. Did we miss something? I'm sure we missed something. Give us your bokehlicious tips in the comments below. For more on depth of field, bokeh, and all things imaging, visit B&H. I'm photographer David Flores. See you next time.